Do you want us to plan kind of what we talked about, like you run through your slides, like reminder of DDA over? One of these, we have a bunch of these infographic sheets. You want one, Gary? I'll bring you one. Give you a paper pen.
Is anybody zoomed in?
Yes, we've got a couple.
Okay, I was just gonna say, I forgot there was a Zoom. I came from soccer. Just try to remember not to put them in there. It's 5:29, so maybe we'll just like, wait, give it a minute or two. You guys can all act natural and mingle.
It's like the world's biggest elevator.
If it is, you're facing the wrong direction.
I know. Makes me a psycho.
There's no reception down here anyway.
I mean, you don't have Wi-Fi. It's open.
Okay, I no, I didn't want any notifications. Shut down. Please start with the intro. Hey guys. Hi. Hey, lady. There's a couple of info sheets that you. Thank you. Yeah. Hey guys. Hey, how are you? at some point, if you guys want, you can add your name to the sign in.
Oh.
Okay, yeah. Cool.
Yeah, well, we should probably get going and keep it on time. Probably you've got other things to do. You're all business owners of some sort, right? Mostly. So I'm Steve Byers. I'm owner Energy Logic. We're right next to the Subway sandwich shop and above it. And for those of you who don't know, we do energy efficiency and sustainability consulting and inspections all across Colorado and Hawaii.
My name's Whitney Way. My husband and I own City Star Brewing in downtown Berthoud. So we've been there for 12 years. And then I also live on Welch, so within the historic downtown as well. But yeah, thank you for being here today. Our goal is to really not stand up here and talk to you, but kind of have a discussion and gather kind of information, your thoughts, and help answer questions. Steve and I aren't going to know the answer to every question, but we've been spending some more time informing ourselves. So hopefully we can like work together to I think we're all here because, you know, we want a awesome birthday. So who, by show of hands, who has been to a DDA related meeting already this year? Or I guess it was last year also. Okay, who has not been to any DDA related discussion? Okay. So yeah, so we're kind of Steve will kick us off, kind of giving an overview so that we can give you guys some background, and hopefully this sheet will answer a few questions and also generate some questions.
Yeah, 73 slides, a lot of detail. I do not have 70. We're going to try to keep it really boiled down. This is actually the busiest slide by far. I'm not going to read every word here. What is a DDA? Downtown Development Authority. Probably the key phrase up there is it's a quasi-public entity, right? So it's not government, it's not government, thus the quasi part. And they're formed as partnerships, you know, to facilitate partnerships. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later too, but there's, you know, DDAs almost always work very closely with the Chamber of Commerce, Main Street coalitions, whatever there might be in the town. A DDA has a board of directors that's appointed by the town, and typically, and there's lots of different rules around DDA. We're not going to go deep into the rules of DDAs in terms of like governance and all that here today. But the town always has a seat on the DDA as well. And we're going to talk about this a good bit. There's DDAs can receive funding for a variety of ways. The primary one that we're really focused on is a tax increment financing. And that's what we're going to get into right next. And that's a pretty short PowerPoint. Nobody really wants to death by PowerPoint, especially at 5:30 in the afternoon. So this is the way that the TIF, the tax increment financing, works. And if you look at that graph, what you'll see, that gray bar is the base, you know, the tax base is adjusted every 2 years. And then everything above from the base year, from college, like year zero, everything above that is able to be, and the increment above the base is what the DDA is able to bring in as funding to run the DDA and to make things happen. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. We really, in the conversation, we want to hear a lot about what you all think is most important to happen in downtown Berthoud, and being very clear, be the corridor all the way out to the west. Well, you'll see, and you can see the map. It's on the back of your flyer. What the DDA is. One of the biggest questions that everybody should have is why now? And it's not really that it's now or never, but now is the time because of all the development that's coming into town. Any development that's done before the DDA is formed doesn't go into that TIF bucket. So it doesn't. We're not able to capture that incremental increase in value. So, all of you know, unless you're living under a rock, that there's a lot of new development coming into the DDA zone. And that's why now is an important time to do this.
And there's a map of the proposed zone on the back that you guys can see. So notable development. Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah.
And then a question that we all have, and there's just been a handful of us on this working group, and it's not been like a top secret think tank or anything. It's a few of us who volunteered to try to learn more about it. And what we said is like, yeah, we think it's a good idea, but we're not 100% that it's the absolute right thing to do. But we probably one of the biggest drivers for us after the town expressed interest in a DDA being formed and then brought it out to all of us was looking at the experiences of other communities and other towns and where they've had DDAs and been very successful. There's a few examples of where DDAs haven't really done a whole lot. I don't think that we've heard of any where it just went catastrophically wrong. So it's either they do pretty good things or they really don't do anything, which is not what anybody wants either, of course. But I think the downside is pretty limited from what I see. And I don't know if maybe it always feels this way that downtown is at a crossroads. I think since in the 20 plus years that I've been living here, I've probably heard that every year. But maybe it's more true today than it ever has been because of the amount of development that we now have coming into town. That we just haven't seen this level of development since I've been here anyway. So I guess that before that probably not either, unless you went way back. Maybe the town was just beginning. So what's been up to date and what's been done to date? And I'm going to let Whitney talk a little bit about the formation of the working group and what we've done so far.
Yeah, so I think it was last year, it was the town board instructed town staff to look into forming a DDA. So that's where, the town said like, hey, we should see, that came from the board. We should see if this is something that's right for our community. But a DDA, it really needs to come from the community and the business owners and the properties. It's not something that a town can just form. So that's why there were these informational meetings came from last year. And then after those, I think there was 3 or 4, Walt said, hey, are there any volunteers for this working group? So we've had formed a working group. I think there's 6 or 8 of us. I think Steve and I are just a little bit too big tonight, but yeah. So and we've met. We kind of met every other week for the last couple months. We had the admin from the Loveland DDA come in and talk to us, and honestly, we've just been asking questions, trying to learn more, trying to ask hard questions like. What exactly, as we're property owners, I mean, I own 2 commercial properties within this space. Like, what is this talk about a mill levy? Could my property taxes go up? I'm sorry, Gary's part of the working group also. Sorry, Gary. But, and Gary is being with the fire district. He's been also, bringing up questions about like fire and library. And there's other entities who also need financing from tax increment financing who rely on that. So there's other entities that we kind of need to take into consideration with some of the steps. But yeah, and then also, as Steve mentioned, just looking at other DDAs, trying to ask, we're kind of at a point where we really need to get an idea of, does everybody, with the majority of folks within this map, is this something that they want? Is there pushback? What are the major concerns? What are the questions? Our job is to not be cheerleaders for this. That's not what we're primarily doing. We're asking tough questions also, but we're really at a point where we need to determine in a transparent way, like, what are the next steps? What do we want as a community? What are things, the projects that a DDA can take on are vast. So, we need to start pulling together examples of, say we do form a DDA, what are things that we can do? And as we've, researched what other DDAs have done, it could be something as simple as bringing in somebody to help brand our downtown. So, for example, I'm also part of a downtown merchants group where we're trying to really, promote our historic downtown area. And it's like, well, what do we call downtown Berthoud? What do we call downtown Berthoud? We don't have something catchy like Old Town Fort Collins or, Pearl Street in Boulder. So, I think we could benefit from branding. There's a lot of talk about signage lately, wayfinding signage, beautification. As commercial development goes up on the west side of town, there's a mountain overlay plan that's going to dictate that there needs to be so many trees and sidewalks need to be so wide and things need to look a certain way. And, in 10 years, the downtown Berthoud, yes, those sidewalks were all updated 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 25?
Yeah, 2009.
Okay, so, but at some point, there's gonna be beautification needs downtown, so, there are potentially other ways that we could go about some of these projects in town. But this is a way where we can take advantage of some of this tax increment financing, potentially. There is support from the town, and we can really have a say in it. And it can come from us rather than, the town has great intentions, but they're also doing a million other things and they're working in other parts of town. So, for us to come together and collaborate.
Yeah, it's a voice for those probably most impacted by what happens in the downtown, i.e. the people who have businesses there. So.
Yeah, so that's kind of where we are now. With the goal of potentially there's multiple questions. So if there is a ballot to form a DDA, it would be a ballot among just the property owners and business owners and residences within that boundary. So it'd be a special election. And there's funny rules about, you can appoint someone if you have a business and a property. So there's a lot to the actual election. So we won't necessarily go into that right now unless you have more questions. But there would be an election. So we're looking at November potentially for that if there does seem to be general support. The main thing would be the first item to establish a DDA. That would set the tax base, but there's a lot that we kind of need to do in advance of that. But that's what we need to do in order to form a DDA is just vote on establishing a DDA. The other two items could be voted on. They could never be voted on, but they are options. So anyway, our goal, so that's where we are now. Goal today is to, really create some discussion. You guys feel free to stand up too. And, we don't all have to just be me and Steve staring at the crowd. But yeah, we want to try to help inform you guys. We aren't going to know the answer to every question, but we can make notes. We'd love to gather more input. And if you aren't up for talking out loud or whatever today, we have created a form to gather information. You can fill out a paper form and there's a QR code. You can fill this out online. You don't have to fill it out today, it could be tomorrow, but it's also another way to share your email address. So another goal from tonight, it'd be great to get everybody on some sort of joint communication who wants to be. So if you want to be informed about what's going on with the DDA, part of the working group, let's make it happen. So.
Yeah, and sort of the real nuts and bolts stuff that arrives next is there's this thing called the draft plan of development, and we have to build that, at least it'll be kind of a V 1.0, I'm sure, going into the election. And with that, one of the things that probably the most exciting thing that it does is it lists out potential projects, and that's one of the things we really want to make sure everybody, we want to make sure everybody's informed and aware of what's going on. This is, again, not meant to be secretive. It's really meant to be inclusive and make sure everybody knows. But the more exciting thing is okay, what things can we do? What things can a DDA do? Which Whitney was talking about. It is vast. anything from very grand projects to very mundane things. So we need to pull a giant list together is no bad idea. I say cautiously.
What's your question?
Hi, I'm Becky with the Berthoud Weekly Surveyor, and I'm a little confused because it's the property owners and the town's responsibility to put the sidewalks and the trees in. So when you talk about DDA money going towards something like that, it puts up alarms to me because I don't think that the DDA should be responsible for what somebody else is responsible for.
It doesn't move responsibility from the town to the DDA for anything like that. The DDA could say like, if sidewalks need repair, the DDA would not be responsible for sidewalk repair.
And would the membership vote on that? Or would the
on-
board make
It
the
would be
decision?
a board making decisions, but that is a question that's come up. So like when the Loveland DDA manager was there, I asked him, I said, you've been a DDA for a while. Is there a point where the town starts to say, hey, that's on you? And he said that they're like actually talking about, what did he said they were talking about something. So, I mean, that's a concern of mine as well. And I think that's why the plan is so important. We're really not seeing, when we've been looking at cases, we're really not seeing that. The town is also, the new board is going to have to vote on it, but the town is talking about supporting the DDA, funding an admin position potentially for 3 or so years. But yeah, so I mean, that was kind of a question of mine as well. But I also don't think that in town, like the commercial downtown, like I'm not responsible for the sidewalk in front of my business. There's differences in different parts of town.
Now, I've been told that every property owner is responsible for the sidewalk in front of their place,
I
mine included on Mountain Avenue.
don't know about businesses.
I think he's correct.
I am correct, yeah.
So, but just as an example, we don't wanna criticize sidewalks.
It's a
Just as
tangent.
an example, for sidewalks, if down the road, the DDA, see all the sidewalks were needed repaired. It's the responsibility of that property owner to repair that sidewalk in front of their place. So the DDA could, if the board, you could take that on and say, you know what? We need to enhance our downtown's image. Sidewalks, nobody really likes to fix sidewalks, we're finding. But it is not the responsibility of the town. So that would be a project a DDA could take on if they so choose. And if they needed to be done.
Operable word there is could, but is not obligated to.
Yeah.
How many members on the board?
It
Five, I
is
think there have
set
to be
5 to
five.
11. 5 to 11.
Yeah.
So what the procedure is that there's a plan, what do we call it? Development plan. And then the town board approves, and sets an ordinance that we can establish a DDA, and then there's an election. And then it's the town board that appoints this board of 5 to 11 people. So there is still that the town board way, ability to, we might all think we're doing one thing and then there is a possibility of something going haywire, but, I don't know, that sounds unlikely.
Just two things, the town, if I'm,
Yes, please.
the town board would appoint the board of directors and the town board approves the budget. Other than that, the board of directors runs the show.
But the board of directors is appointed by the town.
Correct.
Yeah.
By the town board.
But the citizens and business owners can be on that board.
Ideally, it'd be like, there'd be a resident and there'd be business owners from both ends of town and property owners from all over, ideally it would be a diverse group.
To Steve's point earlier, it's the property owners, whether resident or businesses within the district,
Yes.
that can submit their names to be on the board. It's the same process, similar to what we're gonna do now when we talk about committees of the board. People submit their resumes or their names and the board looks at that and then they decide who they want, who they're gonna
Interview and that whole process.
Who gets the tax increase?
So there is, as far as property owners go,
It's a property tax increase.
it is only a property tax if we vote for there to be a property tax increase. So we can form a DDA, and operate a DDA, and it can cost you all nothing except, the special districts, which I'm sure we'll get into that. So we have Chief Charles and Amy here. However, we can, if within our group, if we want to, we can vote on a 1 to 5 mil levy. And Walt came up with some estimates of what that would look like for property owners. So that's what's up on the back, on the top here, these operational mill levy estimates. The mill levy, if it's voted on, and again, we can have a DDA without it being voted on, but it could always end up being voted in. So like if we form a DDA now and say, hey, we're not planning to do this in 10 years, the business owners, property owners within that district could still vote to add a mill levy down the road. So I think that's important to just know. However, it would be 1 to 5 mils, and it's a little confusing to give you an idea. So like my house, average assessed value for residential, my house, I don't know how much my house is worth. I kind of have a small house. But if my house were in the district, it would kind of actually represent that. Our building at City Star Brewing, I think I should have looked before the meeting, our average assessed value is more than this 120,000. But anyway, so we could vote like, hey, we want to do a 1 mil increase. Now the mill levy, that goes toward administration costs of running a DDA. So initially, there's not going to really be much as far as admin costs go, but down the road, if we want somebody, we're all busy. If we want somebody who's in charge of marketing efforts, events, orchestrating projects or researching, maybe the board wants somebody who's like researching different projects, communicating with business owners, a mill levy could potentially fund that. As I mentioned, the town board, the town is talking about potentially being able to fund an admin position for the first 3 years or so. So, when in our working group, what we've kind of talked about, like we don't really see the need to start with the mill levy. But it is something that could come up down the road if a DDA is formed.
And how do you collect money if you don't have a mill?
Well, there'd be no money, day one, there'd be no money, so that's why the town is offered to fund an admin person.
So there's no money for the organization until the
TIF.
mill levy is passed?
No, until the TIF starts to kick in and that increment.
Which will take
TIF.
time too, which will also
It's
take time.
So, we don't know exactly when those lines cross, but the mill levy is not something that we have to do. And as Wendy said, I think our general feel from the working group and from other people that, have showed up at various meetings is that it's probably not the way to go right out of the gate, is to go with the mill levy.
And the mill levy can be used for admin only. So I don't know about you guys, but I don't want to help form an organization where we all pay money just to fund an administrative person.
Right.
For we want to actually do great things for our community. So
So is there 2 funding mechanisms here in this? So the TIF is with the sales tax on the businesses, with the sales that we add to that. And then there's a mill that's coming in for the property?
No.
It's not,
There's no sales tax component at all.
that's not.
well, the town could.
Yes, yeah.
The tax increment, when the district is formed, the assessed values for the properties in those districts are kind of set at a moment in time. And as values rise over time, the increment between that fixed point in time in the future would derive revenues that would go back to the DDA. So
It's all
it's just a property tax.
Yeah.
It's just property
Just
tax.
diverting it from the town to the DDA.
Yeah, so it's not an additional tax in any way. The TIF is not an additional tax. It is, putting money into one bucket instead of the other bucket.
It's just allocating it differently.
There's actually
Land that's not
3.
developed right now, then.
Right.
They're not included.
They
Their values will go up more.
Yeah,
That's why
that's-
we do it now.
That's why the timing,
You have a baseline.
Sorry, I'm trying to catch up.
No.
Yeah, no, well, we spent.
That's why-
months
that's what we've
trying
been
to figure
doing.
this out, so, yeah. And there's actually three, so there's the TIF, there's doing a mill levy, and then the DDA can vote to take on debt too. You know, that is another thing, but it's, again, it's not something that can, be done without people speaking and having a voice in it.
But it is illegal bonding, you can bond, right?
Yes, that's what I'm talking about, yeah.
Do you wanna speak to the special districts, Gary?
No, I'd like Steve Charles.
Do you mind?
I
No,
I will from just only to clear the air here. I own property downtown. I own business downtown. I'm also a director of the Berkeley Fire Protection District, so I have this weird place where I can kind of overlap either direction. I guess as a special district, I would be concerned about capping the potential for future revenues, which is a concern from their standpoint. As a business owner, I see it as a way that basically the town board has tried to put a focus on their importance for downtown being what it is and that it's awesome forever. And so in a way, the town is willing to forego future revenues to allow this DDA to be formed that would direct energy directly back into this corridor. So I'll shut up.
No, you're great.
Well, thank you. Well, I'll speak for special districts as a whole, because we have the library district, the fire district, and the health services district within the town of Berkeley. So let's use Legacy as an example. The assessed value on that property now will be minuscule compared to what it will be once it's built out. And then what's happening, we're providing a service to that, not only from a fire protection perspective, but rescue, medical, and we're not getting the tax base off it. So that's a concern.
Yeah, and we have the same concerns. That's again another reason we're not just up here, strictly cheerleading this. We want to understand everything that we're talking about. One thing we talked about in the working group, again, not a particularly highly informed way, is what can we do if the DDA, can we build something into our plan of development so that the TIF, it doesn't all come to the DDA, but that we carve out pieces to make sure that everybody who's already got an interest is taken care of.
Right.
But we don't have any details on what that would look like yet.
I understand. Well, the other aspect of this is the fact that in a meeting the other day, a comment was made that, well, I'll just use your example, but the comment came back to us says, well, you're getting property tax off all the houses that are coming in. And I can tell you, if you look at your assessed values here, and I know that we're talking some large dollar homes north of town off of Berkeley Parkway, but residential creates call volume for us, whether it be most of our fires are at residential, most of our medicals are at residential. With the population increase, what happens with that is we have an increase in call volume regarding motor vehicle accidents. What's concerning is the fact state government has tampered with the residential assessment rate. And I know they're trying to balance their budget and make Colorado affordable, but what's happened is that it was a 7.2% on the residential assessment rate, which means that if you have say a $100,000 house, and its assessed value is at let's say $10,000, we can only tax on 6.9% of that assessed value at this point in time. On the residential, which I will tell you, our governor is looking at adjusting the commercial assessment rate as well. We can tax at 29%. And not to be, with no disrespect, I love living in Berkeley. I've been here since 1977, so I'm very happy. I love my job. What we need for us is commercial growth, because when we project out 5 years now, we're based on a relatively conservative revenue increase. We're in trouble in about 2028. We're in trouble as far as funding what we have. I'm being very candid. So
Yeah.
Well, this is what we need to hear and know.
Yeah,
You know,
this should be a partnership, so thank you for being here.
so
Yeah.
you know, if there's a way we can find to make sure, you know, I think the last thing that any of us would want, not speaking for the group
Sure.
necessarily, is to screw over the fire district.
Well, I understand. It's not just the fire district.
And the library, all the special
Just across
districts.
the driveway is Amy, and
Yeah.
then we have the self-service district. I think the other end, when you're looking at this development, and I heard you say in 10 years that your board could decide to go for an election on a mill levy, is there something that you're building into whatever decree that you're filing? I'm assuming you have to file this with somebody, the state of Colorado, Laramie County, that there would be something in that decree that holds true in 10 years. Not just for the first 5 years, we're all here, we all move on to something else or whatever, retire.
Yeah.
In 10 years from now, they can't come in and go, we changed our mind, we're gonna go after that mill levy and those taxes. The other aspect is the fact that if that reduction or potential loss of revenue affects 103 square miles. It's not just downtown Berkeley.
Sure.
It affects 103 square miles. So, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for speaking.
Amy, do you want to jump in now too?
I don't wanna jump
I'll
in.
just let me just speak real quick on two things. One, sorry, I was losing my train of thought. You know, so it would have to be voted on to add a mill levy. So I mean, that's it. Like we collectively have to vote to pass that through, and that's why it's important to know now. If we don't, you know, in some DDAs, they get formed by one election cycle. They form a DDA. The next election cycle, they vote to add a mill levy. You know, or it's over a long period of time. But it's important to know that it could happen down the road up to 5 mills.
The difference is this, when you're talking about that, you're affecting the entire fire district. The fire district votes as a whole. Now you have a segment of the population that votes for their own special interest, not necessarily for the interest of the entire fire district.
How would a mill levy affect I really don't know. How would that affect the fire district? Like if there was,
Loss of revenue is the loss of
it would be an additional mill levy that would be beyond their, but I mean, how?
Okay, I'm sorry, I missed that.
Okay,
Yeah, it's,
I'm back to.
you're focused on the TIF.
Yes.
So the mill levy would be
Everything
separate.
at that 5 mils. I don't care.
I don't wanna pay 5 mills.
Yeah,
But,
I'm sorry,
okay,
I missed
and
it.
then
I misread it.
the other thing to note, there's like 8 special districts. There's pest control,
Yeah.
school district, there's the city. So there's a handful, and a lot of them are quite a bit larger districts in this area. But I think we are definitely, and thankfully we've had Gary around to, you know, talk about fire and library. And honestly, those are the 2 districts that we're probably most focused on when we're talking about partnerships. So
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I
Don't-
was down a wrong rabbit hole.
no, and that's why it's so important to sit and like have these conversations, because there might have been something there that I was like, I don't know. I am learning a lot. So
I'm Mark Rawton. I live at the Grey House next to AMW. This conversation isn't unique to Bedford. There are other local areas here that have their own DDA. What has the working group discovered about them? I'm sure you've got lots of examples where they are being successful, where they are being integrated with all the special districts and spending the money wisely. What sort of projects are they coming up with at the moment?
in other communities,
In other communities where they have been going for various amounts of time, where is their success? Where are their lack of success? Let's call it that.
yeah, I think lack of success is probably the way to put it, because again, there's no real example that I've seen of things going really poor. I mean, they just haven't gotten anything done.
Right.
Now, that said, and they also, I think that probably the biggest lack of success has been how long it has taken some of them to go. Loveland took quite a long time to get really going, and then they did really amazing things. You can look at downtown Loveland now, and you see a lot of the fingerprints of what the DDA accomplished there. Windsor, just kind of went along for years, and then took off with theirs.
And they had a speed bump. They
Yeah.
had to overhaul their DDA. So
Yeah.
they had some things they had to learn from. Inglewood, do you remember Inglewood was another one that we were kind of focused on.
Inglewood, Littleton.
As far as projects, and I mean, honestly, in our working group, that's kind of where we're at, is needing to really focus on projects, and it's taken me personally a while to wrap my head around some of the details and logistics, and this is honestly kind of where we're at. Inglewood, Eagle, I just don't remember some of the specific projects of Inglewood.
Inglewood and Littleton are both relatively new.
Yeah.
Inglewood's 2 years, Littleton's 1 year. I think in response to your question, probably Longmont and Fort Collins, they're the two of the oldest DDAs in the state. And you can go look at Old Town Fort Collins, and that's they've been around for 30 years. And pretty much all of that in Old Town is the DDA.
And we were a little reluctant to really look at Fort Collins very much because it has been around. So we have this new ones and old ones, and there's not a lot in between that we've seen for examples. And the size, comparing ourselves
Even
to Fort
Loveland.
Collins,
Loveland's
even
hard to
Loveland or
compare to.
Longmont, it's
Yeah.
that's why even Littleton and Inglewood, we would be one of the smallest DDAs in existence, I'm sure. So I don't know what that means for us. So
Is there a DDA for Gilderstown?
There's not.
They have
a downtown group.
The downtown group, it's much like a chamber of commerce, where there is dues oriented, and it's not. It's run much like a chamber of commerce.
But I think the boundary has to be continuous. So Johnstown's kind of awkward in their new growth areas. Not awkward. I don't know who's listening.
Only if anybody from Johnstown.
Can you speak a little bit to Loveland if you had someone come in as far as, because that's what I've heard, okay,
Yeah, we
they
did.
had it and then they did some great things and you see all that stuff downtown and then I'm hearing it's not good, or maybe that you're saying that they have run out of steam or they're not organized,
Not at Loveland, no.
not Loveland.
No. Yeah, please.
Yeah, thanks.
We'll also have more direct
Loveland
interaction.
DDA was created 2004 or something, a long time ago. And they created it, to Steve's point earlier, when there wasn't a lot of growth. And then Centera came along. And so all the new growth went out to the I-25, and the DDA was left with not a lot of revenue. So it took up until almost 5, 6, 7 years ago when it resurrected itself, when it didn't go defunct, it just resources began to accumulate. They had enough there. They hired a executive, whatever Steve's title is. I'm not sure what Steve's title is, but he is the employee for the DDA, and they have since combined the DDA with their bid, and so there's a number of different organizations in Loveland now, in the downtown, as Steve mentioned, that are really under the auspices of the DDA. And it took them a long time to get going because the revenues, to Steve's point, there wasn't the revenue.
So examples of some of the projects were the foundry area and the parking lot and was that kind of.
Well, they've had influence on all that. I don't know exactly the pieces that the DDA did because they didn't do those developments themselves, of course. And if I remember right, when they formed the DDA because they were particularly concerned about buildings that were becoming vacant, eyesores, things like that, and they wanted to try to influence that, and then it just took a long time to get there. So.
The question I have is with the TIF funding, on here it talks about it's not a new tax, it's allocating a portion of what comes in. Has there been any studies or figures done out as what is the allocated portion potentially? What could that translate to in how much funding possibly a year so
Yeah.
that we know how long it would take to accumulate
Yeah.
anything of any value if we did start it, and then also what would that take away from the special districts like the library? With that coming out, so we could actually look at some of these numbers to
Yeah.
go with some facts behind what we're actually able to accomplish or what we're actually taking
Yeah.
away from.
We've been
So
talking about wanting
it's-
those estimates too.
Yeah,
'cause-
we need, and it's beyond the capacity of the working group to get that, so we're having to ask town to help us come up with those numbers.
Well, we've already got a pretty, good look at what each special taxing district gets now within those DDA boundaries, and you've probably seen a copy of that, I don't know. I think Cindy Leach from the town put that together for us too. That would have been a good thing to even bring along tonight too.
Yeah, we're gonna need more though than I think we have right now to answer the questions.
Somebody respond to her question, sure, the town. The town is looking into that, we're hiring a consultant to help us do an estimate, would be an estimate as to what kind of monies we possibly are anticipating based on the zoning and what we're seeing. It would be just an estimated guess,
Right,
but we're working on that.
okay.
Yeah.
I think that would be helpful, cause if we looked at it and go, well,
Yeah.
it'd take us 30
Yeah.
years to accumulate enough money to do our first project. Or, you know, we could weigh that versus what it may be taken away from special
100%.
districts,
Right.
that type of thing to,
Yeah,
you know, feel more confident in what we were voting for.
and that's, so you're getting at something that's sort of the why now, because you can't wait essentially to do it, or else you just never you don't start with the increment funding, so, yeah, it's weird that way. Yeah.
So is it important to do it now because this isn't an evaluation year? Because they evaluate our property tax every 2 years. Does that have anything to do with it?
They look back to the past year. They go back a year.
Go back a year.
Yeah.
So when one is officially started and created, they go back a year.
Yeah, so it shouldn't matter.
And how would it affect the organization, the DDA, if, let's say, King Supers buys a place in a Ludlow property and puts a store there? What kind of an immediate effect would that have on the DDA? And is it important to have the DDA founded before that might happen?
Well,
Yeah. Yeah, that's really it. That's getting
Because the
the
base-
form before these projects come to fruition is critical, or else there's really no point in forming it.
whether it's a keyway, whatever development happens out there, and even we own, the town owns 2 pieces of property here in town. And we're gonna redevelop we're gonna, I shouldn't say that, I'm not on the board, so please, please, my guess is we will be developing, or we'll sell that to a private developer, because right now they're not being taxed at all. As soon as we sell that to another, there is gonna be an increment. And
And if we look at the map here, you see all this that we know is going into development soon.
But and then
That would be the now why now.
speaking once more to those estimates, that's something that I think would be helpful that say we get an email, if you all opt to fill this out online or on paper, like, we haven't figured out how to connect everyone, but I think that's information that is worth sharing because I personally need to know it's worthwhile also.
If we're already on the email list, we don't need to add that.
But there's
If-
there's still
yeah,
questions
if you
there.
want to, so Walt has kind of separate emails that Walt has his own world of email lists. So if you could fill this, then our working group, that way we can start to, separate out, like, I don't want to be spamming. I mean, you get a million emails a day, right? Like, if you want to be informed on this, like, let's be part of this informational email chain, but we're not just going to mass email everybody within the district right now.
And to Whitney's point on that, this form, one thing that's important for the plan of development is identifying projects, and that's what this form, right, you're asking, is for ideas about what do you see that our downtown needs over the next 5 years, 3, 5, 10 years, that you think, if we could do that, if we had money, that would be really cool.
So even something that if we think needs to be improved, but it's owned by a private property owner, would we add that to our list?
Sure,
Why
yeah,
not?
I mean,
Like, I'd love to see Bertha Drug spruced up,
yeah,
that property.
Well,
Yeah,
and we talked about,
facade
you talked
related
about
pieces.
alleys, you know,
Yeah.
there's been alley projects that have been discussed at
Yes,
times.
I'd say for now, put it all.
and I mean, I'd love to
That sort of
hear,
thing,
like,
yeah.
residences are a part of it too, so, you know, theoretically, like, your residents, I mean, if we can improve, you know, your block that you live on, that should increase your property value, right? Like, what will help, what is you know, I'd love to hear from the residents, like, what do you think would, are good projects that could benefit you? Cause it's not just about businesses.
And one thing that we've talked about at Bed Working Group too is like, you've got the core of downtown, which everybody knows what that is. But now as this corridor out to 287 develops, you know, I think it'd be fantastic if we have a way that really unifies that and makes it all feel like one thing instead of like, oh, there's Old Town and that town. You know, I don't think that's what we want. So that's another thing that I think the DDA could be instrumental in pulling the two sides together, not opposing sides, I mean two places together.
So are you saying the millage increase that we would have in this, again, trying to get caught up?
No, you're good, no worries.
So the projects that we would do, would they be within the red area, or are you saying they can be in a neighborhood that's outside as long as it's in Berkeley?
They'd be within the red area.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, they'd be within the district. I mean, it's a good question. I mean, you'd be counting on the board. I mean, it would be the board making some
Yeah, we hadn't
decisions.
entertained that question.
Yeah,
Can you do a
I haven't heard
project
that
outside the boundary? I wouldn't think so, but
It wouldn't make sense, but it's a good question. Yeah. And then
This is still being worked as well, right?
yeah, this is maybe the third. We're really like trying to get it to look like a tool, an axe, or a hammer.
Well, there was, you know,
Do you have any suggestions?
if I might, there was concern, the working group talked about this, there's been discussion about it, about having residential properties in the district.
Yeah.
Because they would have, you would think, if anybody has a question, what's in it for me, it'd be them. I say, you, how do I get in your own residence? And so we looked at, okay, and also thinking, go ahead, take it on down, down the road, it's a lot easier to come in. Somebody could say, I own this property here, I see the benefits, I'd like to come into the district.
yeah,
So to
Versus
annex.
removing somebody.
yeah.
So we took out a lot of the, if you notice where this,
Yeah.
it follows property lines. Initially, it followed Massachusetts and Welch. And we narrowed that scope in a little bit, to pretty much include only those residents that fronted, for the most part, Mountain Avenue, where you couldn't, I mean, they're right there, they're on
Yeah.
Mountain Avenue.
It's interesting though to think about, and was there anybody who's resident?
Yeah.
I'm really interested, you know, in what, you know, that means, because to me, like, keeping downtown, keeping this corridor vital would be a critical aspect of your property value, I think, over time, if you imagine going the other direction. But I don't know.
The concern is like the giant wall buildings right next to you, or the parking structure
Yeah.
next to your cute little house.
Becky.
I'm sorry,
You're good.
I have 2 addresses
Okay.
and 2 businesses, does that mean I get 4 votes?
2 addresses and 2 businesses.
One vote.
It would, but you could appoint a vote.
Yeah.
Is
I
it,
can appoint
yeah, you
3
could
others.
appoint.
Somebody else would have to be identified, I think, but you yourself couldn't vote 4 times.
Property owner
I guess.
gets 1 vote, so you have 2 addresses, but it's,
So I would get 2 votes, cause I own 2 addresses.
so you have a vote for you and you have a vote for your business. You have to appoint somebody to vote on your behalf.
Yeah, I think that's what
Yeah.
Steve said.
Yes.
Not Steve, the heirs guy.
So, and then Christian with the town has been diving into all the logistics of
Yeah, what's that?
the legal mumbo jumbo of
Yeah.
that, cause it's I wonder the same thing, so.
Yeah.
We've also engaged an attorney who specializes in DDAs.
Do GDAs ever get grants from the state or federal?
Yeah. DDAs can get grants, yes.
They can. I think that Main Street programs could.
Well, it's, my, I just-
Please, Walt, yeah, no, you're great.
To both of your points, yes. One of the benefits of partnering with another organization that's maybe already in existence, in our case, I'm just using it as an example, the Chambers is 501c6, the Main Street's 501c3. Those organizations are eligible to go after grant. So there is a benefit of having other entities partnering with the DDA if you use all that strategically, I guess.
That's clarification. I thought a DDA could go after grants on its own too, so maybe that's wrong.
I think
I thought they couldn't.
I'd have to check.
So maybe that
It might depend on the kind of granting. Obviously, they don't have 501c anything status, so anything that was required for,
Yes.
no. But
Yes.
in the partnership mode, for sure.
Is there anything that anybody is worried about that, it's some questions being held back that you're like skeptical questions, hard questions?
I have a question. So when the DDA improves a home or business, is there an expectation or a charge or something from that home or that business? Or is this just a free gift to that home or business from the DDA?
I think there's the only potential cost of being in the DDA is the mill levy if it's voted on. But otherwise, the DDA is not an organization that you pay into or are obligated to pay to be a part of. However, there could be, so the DDA could have projects where, Yeah.
Well, signage
It could be-
improvements, facade improvements, those are things that if the DDA said they wanted to do, they would just do, and the business would apply and be a beneficiary of that. What I don't know is, could there be a cost sharing mechanism? I
It
don't
would be
know.
up to the DDA board.
Yeah.
They would set the policy and procedures of how they want to spend their money. So the DDA board would set up incentive programs like a sign program, a facade grant program, or whatever else they feel like they want to fund to enhance the downtown area.
but it couldn't be forced on you. And
No.
it would have to be an agreement like,
Yeah.
hey, the DDA can fund $2,000 towards new signage for anyone who needs a new sign.
Yeah.
If you want a $5,000 sign, you'd foot $3,000 of that, for example.
So we can do that.
Yeah.
Is it also, are you asking also if there's a responsibility for the owner within the district?
Both.
Yeah, because I think at another meeting, there was someone that was very concerned about his business being affected by or having to do this, or if someone next to me gets all this fancy, do I have to
No,
read that? No.
no,
I
it's
think that was-
completely voluntary.
Right.
DDA would have no.
I mean, you wanna go along with everybody else. in my
Well, I mean, eventually, if you're just letting your storefront, for example, decay, I'm sure that is problematic. And if there's money to help you not do that, I don't know why you wouldn't want to do it. But there's no way the DDA can compel any action that I've ever heard of.
It's not a government body, there's no
Yeah.
code, they
Right.
can't enforce a code
I think that's
on.
important to.
Yeah.
It's not an HOA.
It's not HOA, no DDA police.
That's the only thing I kept thinking of.
Right? I mean, I
Yeah.
thought,
Yeah, it's similar, but it's not the same. No, but keep in mind that the town's zoning code still
Right.
is in effect.
Yes.
Yeah,
So if somebody's home, I'm not home, I can't think of an example, but if they're violating an existing code of the town of Berthoud, then the town of Berthoud's code still is in effect. And so the town would meet up with that property owner or the businesses and for whatever, and rectify whatever situation is not meeting code.
but if the DDA thinks your sign is ugly, well, nothing they can do about that.
As long as everybody's following the rules, can't change something.
The
town
town zoning,
rules.
the town's,
Yeah.
yes.
there won't be like DDA rules.
No.
I think it'll be enticing, it'll be, the DDA would put maybe incentives in place to encourage business owners and property owners, say you want to have a uniform sign policy for the downtown, would they put an incentive program in place to encourage businesses to maybe change out their signs? I'm just using that as an example. I'm not saying we need it at all, but things like that. So it wouldn't be dictating to the business, you must do this. I think it's more of an incentive.
Josh?
What are some examples of like Longmont, Fort Collins, what did their DD besides signs? I mean, do they put flower pots in the corners? What did they do? What?
I don't have a clear list.
Yeah, I don't have a good
I
list
think you
either.
have to go on their website.
Yeah,
We got reports from a bunch of different towns, and frankly, they all started to run together a little
I
bit.
mean, did they break an alley? Is that what they did? Or?
They know that Loveland did some alley projects. I know. I'm not sure about Longmont.
but that's something, I'm making a note, like, I think
Well-
that we could stand the email around
Yeah, and that's why.
examples.
Yeah, we kind of meant to have some more of that for you today. We just didn't get there. She lost my train
This
of
is
thought.
why an admin is important, once you form an organization, cause Steve and I are both, everybody on the working group, like, we don't have a ton of time for, for this, so that's why once an organization is established, it's important to have an
But we
admin.
definitely can get more examples together. They're there. I know they're there. We can get them out.
One example in Loveland, you can apply to the DDA if you're a business for a facade improvement grant. So if you've got an ugly storefront and you can go to the DDA and say, hey, I'd like to do this, show them a picture, their board takes it up and they may decide that this project's important and they help you out with some funding for that. That's the sort of thing they do.
Oh, I remember what I was going to say. So in Loveland, other than they do, and I'm not suggesting we need this, and the DDA puts on events. They put on some fairly good side. I think they do the Corn Festival, I think they said.
Chamber does that, don't they?
Chamber does a corn fest.
Okay.
There's the
Sure, they partnered with it. He said something about the Corn Festival. Anyway, they got a couple of other events that they do on their own. The DDA, I think they're partially fundraisers for the DDA, but they're also meant to bring people to downtown. So, but I don't know about other towns.
But
But
yeah, and a DDA, it doesn't have to, it's not like a cookie cutter thing, it doesn't have to look the same way.
no.
It can, I think that we learned about the Windsor DDA really functions more like a Main Street program, less, they really aren't getting much from their TIF, I don't think, was that Windsor? Yeah, so they're functioning very different. So we can be creative and come up with projects, but I think emailing examples around would be helpful.
Yeah.
And those TIF estimates too, once we have them.
And Josh, to
I
your
think the
point,
Loveland DDA brings the music in at the Foundry.
I think you're right,
That's-
that is one.
Yeah.
That's
bands,
one thing you mentioned, yeah.
Yep.
for some DDAs, like in just use Loveland, but it's because it's the closest, but they will use their money to either purchase or renovate old buildings that they wanna improve, enhance. For whatever reason, the market's not doing that. So they
Enhance it and resell it,
probably, yes.
buy it, fix it up and resell it.
I don't know about buying it.
Or the money.
Put the money.
Yeah, just preservation, like we could, this just came to my head, but like hone in on the church downtown, or just other historic projects. Mark, do you have, from the Historical Society's perspective, like, do you have any?
I just have a question about tax exempt properties.
Oh, yeah.
Zoning is a tax exempt property.
Mhm.
And I would assume that we wouldn't have a vote in the DDA
Is that correct?
because we're not paying tax.
So I think your business is in the
Yeah.
DDA, so I think you still do. That's a good question.
Good
My assumption is you
clarification.
still would.
There'd be a few others like that too.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
like, I'm never gonna forget the number, but it's
Yeah.
a number of.
Well, I imagine the church would be that sort of
Right.
entity. They're gonna be a tax exempt.
Yep.
The business, but maybe the property still has a vote, possibly?
Church probably owns the properties. I don't know. We should get some
That's a good
clarification.
question.
on
There's
that.
some, that's why, there's like definitely some,
I was told that we at the library would get a vote. And obviously we are funded by taxes, we don't pay them.
Mhm.
So I would assume that if a special district would get a vote, then
Okay, so the next question do those properties stand to benefit from the DDA?
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
I mean,
Property
Yeah,
value, you know, is property value,
So
so
it's also, they wouldn't be excluded from the DDA's, you know, love.
Asking for improvement.
again, if you're not paying any property tax,
Well, I know,
I mean, isn't that kind of a
but that's what I think what the DDA is meant to do is look at the whole and go, okay, well,
It's rifle.
95% is great, but this 5% of town really needs help, and that's what we want to focus on. You know, and so I don't see why we would.
for me personally, why I'm in this working group is because, you know, I have properties in it. I live in Berthoud. I'm very invested in this community, and it's not that I really want to be in this working group, but I don't want to not be in it. You know, I want to be involved in what happens and the impact. And, you know, I hate when people talk about like, oh, downtown Berthoud's going to be like Highway 34 in Loveland at some point. I'm like, gosh, I hope not. Like, and I think you guys all agree with that. Yeah, I really want to protect what we have, and the town is growing, and I think that we want growth is inevitable, you know, but we want it to be sustainable, and we want to maintain the community that we love. But I'm also, you know, we're seeing commercial growth on the north end of town and elsewhere, and you know, history repeats itself. So, you know, when I was a kid, right, weren't there a lot of downtown centers where, you know, where the downtowns were abandoned? And I want to protect like our historic buildings and our vibrant downtown area, and my property values are only going to benefit from that. All the organizations, any property and business should benefit from that, theoretically. That was kind of a long spiel, but
Well, we're all in this together, right?
ideally.
Yeah, and so I think that's part of what the DDA does. It brings all the business together
Yeah.
along the corridor.
There's-
I like that.
There's just, you know, it all goes back to the why now, and this advantage to take some of this TIF funding that it's funding that would go to the town or the county. So it's a piece of potentially some of the county funding, but to do it in a sustainable way, you know, take care of, you know, the fire and library and some of these districts. They're all very much a part of our community as well. So we need to partner and do it together.
So there's a lot of detailed questions around the election mechanisms and stuff like that that are you know, governed by law, and Christian's working through those things. I think for all of us, the two big questions are what sort of projects, you know, to your point, and our special district friends, and you know, coming up with, you know, what that means on both of those. And see, you know, the project list kind of easy. We'll all be able to come up with interesting things that would be cool for downtown. Obviously, the special district questions is a lot deeper, more pointed question that we got to come up with a good answer for. So,
But I mean, to Josh's point, there's 20 DDAs in the state of Colorado, and they all have special districts.
right, so that's one of the things that we hadn't explored was how the other DDAs are working with their special districts. So we're not going to blaze trail here, but I'm not assuming they've all done a great job on that either. So, yeah. So let's figure that out.
Does it start at the roundabout at First Street?
Yeah.
I mean, I looked at the map, but I couldn't tell.
Maybe that's a little bigger.
Yeah, the map, yeah.
This is my bad, sorry. I cut that off, I guess.
Yeah, starts at the roundabout.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
Steve's on the map on the screen.
I see. Okay, I see.
And then there's some residences on the south side excluded.
So
And then
what governs the boundary changing in the future?
Well,
That's a good question. Like, what is the annexation process?
Right,
I don't
because as Berthoud grows and changes, who decides?
And that was a question, or early on, that was a topic that, hey, sometimes in, you know, old town neighborhoods, you see a lot of houses be converted into businesses.
Yeah.
So that's why initially there was more residences in, and then they became cut out. But yeah, what is the annexation process? Do you know why?
I think it would be similar to what it is today, in that
You ask, yeah,
you asked to be annexed.
yeah.
So you would ask the DDA board, the board then I would assume make a recommendation to the town board.
Well, and I mean, beyond just myself personally, right, is as Bertha goes east or west.
Right.
Direction.
Extends even further.
Yep.
Yeah, cause you kind of went, oh, well, let's grab everything kind of going out to 287, right?
Mhm.
That's kind of grandfathered in. Well,
Yeah.
as things go east, what do you do there,
Right.
right? Can you do this same process again and just say that's all part of the DDA?
The DDA can't go out and grab more.
Well, you're kind of doing that now, right?
But you're starting from the beginning.
It would have to be
And
voted.
people are voting
Yes,
for this
Oh.
initial boundary.
and the same thing would happen again. So
Is that-
if we wanted to go east, we would, DDA board just couldn't say, hey,
I don't
we're gonna
think so.
extend our boundaries east.
But could everyone within the boundary vote to annex property without their super
My
consent?
guess is no.
I would assume not, but.
You didn't ask those people to be in this now.
Right,
Yeah,
that's what
right,
I'm-
that's Jerry's point, yeah.
I don't know,
But
I'm
they're
just,
gonna vote.
No.
We are,
But it's a
But
vote.
that's the vote, like, that's
But
the.
you-
but well, after you vote the first time, then
It
what happens?
starts with the
Right.
landowner,
Then it's
so
annexed.
if there's a property east of First Street, for instance, that wants to be part of the DDA, they could petition for annexation and
Right.
then we have to vote.
I think it would be good to just clarify, like, I
Because
bet
you
we could find
mentioned
clarification.
That things have to be contiguous, right?
I think so.
And so
I
all
think
of a
that's
sudden,
come up.
if something happens out, I
I'm
don't know,
not
even
even
further.
sure they need to be contiguous, as I understand it.
No, they
I thought that's what Loveland said, where they had these really weird lines because of that, but I'm not sure either.
URAs do not have to be contiguous.
Maybe that's, no.
So
Right,
isn't there
so-
commercial lots in front of Fickle Farm where they're putting those houses in? Isn't there a commercial zone
Yep.
on 56?
Oh, there is?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
So that's east of First Street.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So you can flag.
That's
we didn't want to do
fair.
that.
Over near
Yeah,
me,
we're not
it
interested in
has to be
flagpole.
contiguous, but
Well-
if you follow a right of way, you can flagpole.
Yes.
Well, let's get clarity on that question
Yeah.
too.
I just,
Yeah.
I don't know how that works.
And then as far as just after this meeting, just so everybody knows, we don't have any more meetings on the calendar, but we probably will have a working group meeting in the next couple weeks. So if that's something that you wanna be more involved in or, attend, please let us know. And
When are they?
and then in addition,
We haven't had a set time, it's like when we
Yeah.
get enough people who schedule to accommodate a meeting, so there hasn't been a set time, but
So when you have one set, can you send out an email and let people know?
yeah,
Absolutely.
so it starts with this. So for more information, provide your email here. So, but yeah, so I think those are the next steps, like set another working group meeting, it's open invite and then also, follow up with informative emails. That might take a couple weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, pull information together and, we definitely aren't working full-time on this.
Will we also be emailing mass, because there's still a lot of people that don't even know yet, or can't make it, or, so you, like.
Do another mass.
Yeah, another mass,
Yeah.
and also that one in the mail, I think was good to get.
And if anybody has a good idea of like how to connect everyone for conversation on this,
Send a flyer with your taxes.
sometimes email chains can be cumbersome, but maybe there's some other.
I mean, not everybody's on Facebook.
Maybe we need to go knock on
You
the
have social media mechanism.
That's
Yeah,
what I'm saying.
I don't have time to knock on doors.
Well, I don't think any of us do, but that may be the way you have to get a hold of some people.
well,
If we get to a
everybody's getting mailers too though, so.
Yeah.
Everybody, for this meeting, we emailed, I did multiple times, all the businesses pretty much in the district. And then we mailed mailings to the property owners who may live out of town, who I don't have email addresses. So either you're a property owner or a business, you probably got, if you're a business, you probably got a couple emails. If you're a property owner, then you got a mailing. If I didn't have your, so, I mean, there's not much more you can do. If people don't open their
Yeah.
emails, there's so much you can do.
And we want to make the working group meetings open, but there's also like,
Has to be productive.
You know, all of you have tried to get 6 to 8 people together to have a meeting who all work in different businesses, and it's difficult. So, you know, we'll but as soon as we have it, we'll get it out via our own list, and we'll let Walt know so he can send out to his list. As our mailing list will get bigger and bigger over time, you know, as people get support gets around,
Yeah.
people fill this out. So
Is this recorded somewhere that people can see, and is information on the town site at this point? No,
This,
It's being recorded.
this,
being
this,
recorded, so is there somewhere we can share for people that
We
could,
can add it if you would like to.
like, I didn't know if there's a part on the town site to.
We could upload it to YouTube if you'd like.
Sure. Yeah. I think transparency is, huge.
Yeah.
You know, that I think that's where we're at, like also just determining, hey, is this something we should all keep working on and work toward, or
and we
is there general?
we in all these meetings get to this level of ignorance.
But can I just say thank you for
Yes.
all the work that those of you who are on the working group
Oh,
have
thank
put
you.
into, cause you saved us a lot of time.
I hope so.
Of being able to do that, so thank you for,
There-
Thank you.
being able to inform us.
the only like drop dead date, this is the only one.
Yeah.
If we wanna get this on the November ballot, the county has to get the information, I think it's sometime in July.
Yeah.
Other than that, I mean, it doesn't have to go, I mean, if it takes more time, you wanna put it on the April ballot, I mean, it's not like so that would be the only date is to get this on the county's ballot, our ballot, in November, there is a date. It's
Yeah,
sometime in
that's just
July.
to put it on, you know, for a vote. And then it wouldn't be like we would stop doing the outreach and the
Correct.
discussion, but Walt's right. If we miss it, we miss it. And go to April.
So it doesn't have to be a special election, it can go on the November ballot?
It is special, but the county will administer it.
Yeah,
Because it's not everybody in Berthoud is voting on it. It's just,
Right. Well, I get that.
so it has to
Yeah.
be separate from the November election.
That's what I thought, but you made it sound like it could be on the November ballot.
No, it will be
No.
in November.
It will happen during that election, but a separate ballot.
Got it.
It's so confusing.
Sorry,
Some
I'm
of
old
it.
and it takes me a while to get stuff, you know, my brain's kind of
And for
getting
the ballot, the way the ballot works, for those property owners and businesses that are in the district that are also voters, they automatically will get a ballot.
Mhm.
Automatically, because you're getting one today. If you're a business or a property that's not doesn't live here, then you have to request.
Yeah.
You have to sign an affidavit that says, yes, I own property and this is the address. We or our clerk's office will verify that, and then we will send you a ballot.
And that's, Becky, where we'll potentially have to knock on doors and,
And track people
collaborate,
down.
make sure that
Yeah.
our business owners
yeah, if
know.
you know somebody's in that
Yeah.
category, then yeah, that'll be helpful because
Yes.
probably gonna be that personal knowledge of that situation is gonna help.
But we've heard of some communities where they voted, like, it took years for everybody to vote yes on a DDA and, but I feel like a lot of those were bigger areas and I feel our numbers aren't huge. There's estimate numbers on this sheet and I feel like I know a lot of these faces, so, so I love that it's kind of the smaller community area. Yep.
Just for my own personal interest, based on the good cross-section of the DDA zone, how many are interested now positively if them with DDA together?
You wanna show our hands?
What's that look like from the front?
Oh, sorry, I wasn't actually looking at it like that.
I think it's 65%.
Yeah.
So there is an interest in a DDA,
Yeah.
even if it is unproductive.
Well, I don't think.
So having the DDA established ahead of any further change, we're basically putting a stake in the ground
That's
from
it.
here on forward,
Yeah.
even if we don't do anything.
Yeah, and I think, you know, for some people, you know, again, we know that some people, this is their first meeting. So I wouldn't expect anybody to have come to a conclusion from this meeting.
No,
So,
no, but there's a general feeling of what's good for the town.
I think
I
so.
think in what, yeah, when
And
I'm
I mean, I-
talking to people, it's a generally positive thing, but.
And I personally have hesitation sometimes as well. I mean, we've spent so much energy trying to understand some of the logistics, and I'm at a point where, you know, I need to know what we can do. What are the projects? What does this group want to do? And for me to be on board, even though I'm on this working group, for me to be on board, I want to see that project list and some of those ideas and really get a feel for that.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
we don't want to waste anybody's time.
Maybe.
I will add the caveat, if you're willing to come to an hour and a half long meeting on a Monday night to talk about the DDA, you're probably at least somewhat like in favor of it, unless you're dramatically.
Or
opposed.
very concerned.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
will say that, I appreciate the fact, I'm personally not speaking as a library, but I personally am a big fan of keeping tax dollars as local as possible. I think that's where they have the most impact. If less of my money goes to the feds and even the state and stays local, I love that.
Or it goes to Loveland or Longmont.
The county,
Yeah,
because I think that's all,
county,
it's
yeah.
like city county taxes.
Yeah.
So, to me, like, you asked about, like, concerns, obviously, I run the library district, we are only viable, I can say we only really have the doors open at this point because of the increase in taxes in the 8 years that I have been here. We would probably have had to lay off or close doors by now if we didn't see that increase in property value and development. So to me, the concern, I'm fine with the town saying we are willing to divert some of our local tax dollars to this other local organization. The problem with the vote is the way it's set up, if you don't somehow exempt the other special districts is my money gets diverted too, and I didn't have much of a say. That being said, I am not opposed to this, you know, so I think that keeping those dollars really local and really focused is a super helpful thing. So I do appreciate that. I think it'd be easier to get excited about it if I had a better idea of what could happen.
Right, so we need, thank you, we need the numbers, and then, you know, as we talked this through tonight, even though I said, you know, I think our general feeling, I know that our general feeling has been to avoid a mill request, that if it means that making sure that we take care of special districts means that we need to think about that that's probably something we should consider, reconsider, not coming down one way or the other on that.
And I think just realistically, being a property owner, I think property owners need to know that that's a possibility that can get voted on down the road. But,
Yeah, oh, for sure.
so I have I think, and if any of you do research and pull stuff together, like, please go for it. But yeah, so we need to kind of come up with some TIF estimates, like what could this look like down the road? Share some more examples. How do we partner with the special districts? What does that look like? And I think looking at other communities as well, maybe we can find some examples in those 20 DDAs. I'd like to clarify the annexation, even though, I mean, hopefully that might not come up, but I'm just curious too. And then,
Tax
yeah.
exempt property
mhm.
voting.
Yeah, some of the voting ins and outs. But, is there any other questions?
I don't know if maybe you know as well, but like related to the special districts, does the DDA have authority to have some kind of agreement with sharing kind of future tips so they could work that out?
That's what we were talking, like, what can we do to,
It's not
just
it's
work
not an
together.
all or none game. It's a negotiation and
well, one that we think that we need to at least have a pretty good sense of in the draft plan of development.
yes.
So there's like a kind of vague plan of development that goes to the town board, and then they vote for a DDA to be established that allows us to have our election. They create an ordinance, but that plan of development, that's where I think we would need to have some bones referring to special districts. And
I think my other question, and this might be getting too far ahead, but are there people that we know of already who are interested in being on the board for this once it's formed, because I would hate to see it's like, okay, everyone was like, great, we want this funding, it's funded. I'm not taking that on, like,
Yeah.
do we know if there's anybody who's
We haven't-
interested in
That's a good question.
We haven't put it out
Yeah.
there that way to see who will wanna do it, you know.
Somebody's gotta write policy, and that's,
Well, the writing the draft plan development is still on this working group, and that's, you know, why, you know, if there's some more people who wanna help out with that. Yeah. I feel like we can handle it, but, you know, more input is probably more important than more people trying to write. So, yes, sir.
I was just wondering about the vote. So would it just be a majority of the people within the district would be required to
It's simple
pass it?
majority,
I
right?
believe so.
Yes.
So that people that voted no within that district would be part of it.
Yeah.
We're talking about like later on, somebody would have to request to be a part of it. I didn't know
Right.
if you, whether you vote yes or no and you're inside the district and then all of a sudden there's a 5 mil levy.
You're in it.
You start opt out.
But people would have,
It sounded great, but
Yeah.
people would have had to have voted for that mill levy.
okay, so you can be, whether you, even if you voted no, so
Even if you voted no, you could have your property taxes raised
Yep.
down the road. If everyone else within that group.
Just voted
So
for
yeah,
it,
I mean,
yeah.
that's important to.
Yeah.
To know, we're looking at about 228 properties, 90 or so businesses, so we're looking at 300-ish votes. So, but that's a great question, clarification. Should we wrap it up? Is there any other comments or feedback, questions, Steve?
If you didn't get one of these, please do, because that's gonna be the best mechanism, or if you've got her, you know, Whitney's email or my email,
Oh, yeah.
obviously you're welcome to
I can send you the
email
link,
us.
but yeah.
But to help them, if you have projects, use the barcode because it already uploads it, so it'll free up their inbox a little bit. So if you,
Yeah.
it's easier on them if you respond using the barcode.
Yeah.
And just like
Appreciate that.
ideas, it could be the smallest idea, you
Yeah.
know, oh, we need updated photos of businesses. Or it could be some grand idea that's 20 years down the road. Now, if you just opt to fill out a paper sheet, I don't know what to do with it.
Drop it by City Star.
Read City Star, the library,
I don't know, we'll take it.
the town.
I mean, drop it off at the front desk.
Yeah.
I didn't,
I'll input it,
I
I'll
didn't
send
think through that.
I'll send it over to Whitney and Steve. So, you know.
if you bring it to the library, I'll get them to the right site.
Yeah. That's the beauty of being a relatively small district.
It'll get there.
Well, yeah. Cool. Thank you so much
Thank you all
for
for
your
coming.
time. Yeah, we super appreciate it. But yeah, feel free. I'll hang out for a few minutes. Feel free to mosey